But in this case of Durham, I think, I mean, we know Barr will do anything for Donald Trump. He's his Roy Cohn. He's his hack. We know that. He's already committed perjury before Congress. I'm surprised somebody hasn't moved to disbar him, because he really should be disbarred. And we'll see if Durham should be disbarred as well. It's happened before. Bill Clinton got disbarred for perjury. And we'll see if these men continue doing what they do. Perhaps they'll be disbarred too, and perhaps justice they will be met with the justice they deserve. But with Durham, Willie, he rushes a statement out. And the statement is not in response to something that a mob boss said, that he thought he needed to clear the air, or that a drug cartel did or said, or a lawyer for a drug cartel did or said, that he had to rush a statement out to undermine that. Durham, an officer of the court, felt the need to rush out a PR statement, like a PR hack, in response to an inspector general's report from his own department. I mean, this is so sleazy. It's so humiliating for this man. I mean, how low is he? Is he going to be smoking cigars with Rudy Giuliani and drinking wine with Rudy Giuliani at some Donald Trump gold-plated club in the near future? Why would anyone shame themselves like this?
And the statement was put out about an ongoing investigation, which is highly unusual. You can add that into it as well. Attorney General Barr has reached a conclusion, along with Donald Trump, and they reached it a long time ago, that there was a deep state conspiracy into the 2016 campaign, one they believe continues. They didn't get the evidence for their conclusion yesterday, so he's now enlisted John Durham over the last several months to help him find that conclusion, traveling around the world to places like Italy with him, conducting interviews, Noah. But imagine being the top of the Justice Department, Attorney General Barr, reading that report yesterday, 434 pages from your own Inspector General, and reflexively coming out and saying, I don't believe it. I know you took almost 2 years to look into these questions, but I don't believe what you're saying. Therefore, I'm running my own parallel investigation with John Durham. As President Trump said himself last week, maybe anticipating that the IG report wasn't going to go the way he hoped, he said, the big one to wait for is the Durham report. They're putting all their eggs in this new basket.
Yeah, but it's in the narrative that they're trying to advance here is indelibly muddied by this IG report. You can't undo that. And Republicans who are expecting, I suppose, a political response here, a political reaction, should know that they have failed the expectations game in a very similar way to how proponents of a theory of Russia collusion failed the expectations game ahead of the Mueller report. What the Mueller report alleged is very serious, actionable by Congress, attempted obstruction of justice, but it failed to meet the threshold, a very serious threshold, of a conspiracy to work with a foreign power to affect a political outcome domestically. What happened here is very serious. As Gene said, the FISA abuse issue is a live issue. Civil libertarians have said for a long time the necessarily secretive way in which these courts operate makes them uniquely prone to abuse. Nevertheless, what was expected here was nothing short of a conspiracy to undermine the sitting president before he even came into office. That is going to create a muted response among the public who expected that, and now get something much less serious than that, even though those allegations are very real. So, I mean, I don't want to prejudge this the second report before it comes out. It's probably not the last report into 2016. We are compelled now to relive that investigation into perpetuity. But it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to undo the narrative that has been created by this IG report, which is very comprehensive.
Very.
Well, and the thing is, Mika, I mean, actually, Barr doesn't believe those conspiracy theories that he's trying to push. Those conspiracy theories, he's actually trying to muddy up the waters and try to confuse people and distract them from the facts, because he has been in interviews where he deliberately lied about, again, timeline, saying that the Steele dossier started the investigation, or, you know, suggesting that the Carter Page FISA warrants started the investigation, were responsible for the investigation. I mean, that was blown out of the water yesterday. Every conspiracy theory about how this began and how it was ideologically driven by a deep state FBI was disproven yesterday. And Barr knows it. I mean, Barr knows it, and yet he's continuing as Attorney General of the United States, he and Durham are actually trying to concoct a lie to the American people that might muddy up the waters and make people forget about this Inspector General's report by a highly respected IG. But you know what? Barr obviously decided a long time ago his job was to be Roy Cohn. We know what happened to Roy Cohn's reputation. It'll happen to Barr's too.
This appears to be his playbook. So everyone stay with us. Still ahead on Morning Joe, the president's defenders refuse to let go of the debunked conspiracy that Ukraine meddled in the 2016 election. Now the FBI director is once again pushing back. We'll have that. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.